The mop made a soft sound against the floor as Park HFY pushed it slowly across the empty hallway. It was past midnight on the Veloran embassy station, and the lights had dimmed to a soft blue glow. Most of the aliens were sleeping now. Most of the humans too, but not HFY. His shift started when everyone else went to bed. He liked it this way, the quiet, the peace, no one looking at him like he was dirt on their expensive shoes. HFY was 38 years old. He had gray hairs at his temples now more than last year. His back hurt sometimes when he bent down too long, but he kept working. He had to. Back on Earth, his mother was taking care of his daughter Yuna, and they needed the money he sent home every month. The Veloran embassy station floated high above Earth like a giant silver flower. It was beautiful and strange, full of aliens who stood 7 feet tall with skin like pale blue moonlight. They had glowing marks on their faces and arms that changed color with their moods. When they were happy, the marks glowed warm gold. When they were angry, they turned deep red. HFY had learned to read those colors in the 18 months he had worked here. He had learned many things. He had learned that Velorans thought humans were primitive. He had learned that they called Earth people ground walkers as an insult. He had learned that to them, a janitor was lower than the machines that cleaned their air. But HFY did not mind. He had been a teacher once back in Korea. He had taught little children how to read and write. He had loved that job with his whole heart. But then his wife Suwa got sick, and the hospital bills kept coming, and his teacher's salary was not enough. When she died 2 years ago, he was left with debt and a 5-year-old daughter who cried for her mother every night. The job on the station paid 3 times what he earned as a teacher, so he took it. He left his daughter with his mother and flew up to the stars to push a mop. HFY finished the hallway and pushed his cart toward the lower observation deck. This was his favorite part of the station. No one ever came here. The important Velorans stayed in the upper levels where the views were better and the rooms were fancier. Down here, there was just a small room with a big window that looked down at Earth. He could see Korea from here sometimes, when the station's orbit was right. He would stand at the window and imagine Yuna sleeping in her small bed, his mother sitting beside her, reading her a story. He missed them so much it felt like a hole in his chest. HFY opened the door to the storage room next to the observation deck. This was his secret spot. He had moved some boxes around to make a little space where he could sit during his breaks. He had taped a photo of Yuna to the wall, right next to a small window that also showed Earth. But tonight, something was different. HFY stopped and looked around. Someone had been here. The boxes he had arranged were pushed aside. There were small footprints in the dust on the floor, and his snacks, the little Korean candies he kept hidden in a box, were gone. Only the empty wrappers remained, scattered on the ground like fallen leaves. He was not angry, he was curious. The footprints were small, too small for an adult Veloran, too small for a human worker. They looked like they belonged to a child. But there were no children on the station, at least none that HFY knew about. He picked up the candy wrappers and threw them away. Then he sat down in his little corner and ate his dinner, a cold rice ball his mother had taught him to make. He thought about the mysterious visitor while he chewed. A child sneaking around at night, eating stolen candy. It reminded him of Yuna. She used to sneak into the kitchen when she thought her parents were sleeping. Suwa would pretend not to notice, but she always smiled about it later. HFY smiled now too. He did not know who this child was or why they were hiding down here, but he remembered what it felt like to be small and lonely. He remembered hiding in his grandmother's storage room when he was young, when his parents fought too much and he needed to escape. Before he left that night, HFY did something strange. He took out a piece of paper from his cart and folded it carefully. His fingers moved from memory, making the folds his mother had taught him when he was just a boy. When he was done, he had made a small paper crane with wings that seemed ready to fly. He placed the crane on the windowsill where the mysterious visitor would see it. Next to it, he left 3 more candies. It was a gift for a stranger, a small kindness that cost him nothing. The next night, HFY came back to the storage room with his heart beating a little faster than usual. He did not know what to expect. Maybe the visitor would not come back. Maybe security had already found them and taken them away. But when he opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. The paper crane was gone. The candies were gone. And in their place, lying carefully on the windowsill, was a piece of thick paper. It was not human paper. It was vellum parchment, the kind the important officials used for documents. On the parchment, someone had drawn a picture with clumsy lines. It was a bird with wide wings, just like the crane HFY had made. He picked up the drawing and held it gently. The lines were shaky, like a child's drawing, but there was something beautiful about it too. Whoever made this had tried very hard. HFY felt tears burning in his eyes, and he did not know why. It was just a drawing, just a piece of paper, but it felt like more than that. It felt like a conversation, a tiny bridge built across the darkness between 2 strangers. He sat down and made another crane. This time he made a second one too, and a third. He arranged them on the windowsill like a small family. Then he wrote a note on a piece of paper using big, simple letters. "I like your bird. It is very pretty." He did not know if the visitor could read human writing. He did not know if they could read at all. But it did not matter. He wanted them to know that someone had seen their gift. Someone cared. 3 nights later, HFY found another drawing waiting for him. This time it showed 2 figures. One was tall, one was small. They were holding hands under a sky full of stars. And in that moment, Park HFY, a janitor who was invisible to everyone on the station, felt like the luckiest man in the universe. He did not know yet that the small figure in the drawing was a princess. He did not know that her mother was the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. He did not know that his small acts of kindness were being watched by eyes he could not see. He only knew that somewhere on this cold station, there was a lonely child who needed a friend. And Park HFY had always been good at being a friend. HFY arrived early that night. He had finished his work on the upper decks faster than usual because he could not stop thinking about the storage room, about the drawings, about the mysterious child who came to his secret place in the darkness. He pushed open the door quietly, expecting to find more drawings waiting for him. Instead, he found something else. A child was sitting in the corner of the room. A small vellum child with silver-blue skin and markings that flickered like dying candles. She was holding the paper crane he had left last night, pressing it against her chest like it was something precious. When she saw him, her whole body went stiff. Her eyes grew wide with fear. The glowing marks on her skin turned pale white, almost invisible. She looked like a small animal caught in a trap, waiting for the hunter to strike. HFY did not move. He did not call for security. He did not bow or kneel like the rules said humans must do when they meet any vellum. He just stood there looking at her with soft eyes. She was so small, so scared. Her thin body was shaking, and her fingers gripped the paper crane so hard that it was starting to bend. HFY remembered his daughter. He remembered how Yuna looked on the day of her mother's funeral, standing beside the grave with tears running down her face, too scared to cry out loud. He remembered picking her up and holding her close, saying nothing, just letting her know she was not alone. Slowly, very slowly, HFY sat down on the floor. He crossed his legs and put his hands in his lap where the child could see them. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out his dinner, a container of kimbap his mother had packed for him during his last visit to Earth. He opened the container and began to eat. He did not look at the child. He did not speak to her. He just ate his kimbap roll by roll, chewing slowly, like this was the most normal thing in the world. After a few minutes, he felt the child's eyes on him. Her fear was turning into curiosity. Her glowing marks shifted from white to a pale blue. HFY took out one kimbap roll and placed it on a clean napkin. He pushed it gently toward her, still not looking directly at her face. Then he went back to eating his own food. For a long time, nothing happened. The child did not move. The kimbap sat there on the napkin, waiting. Then so quietly that HFY almost missed it, a small hand reached out and took the food. He heard a soft chewing sound, then another. He smiled but did not turn around. He finished his dinner and cleaned up his container. Then he took out a piece of paper and began to fold. He made a rabbit this time. It had long ears and a round body. When he was done, he placed it next to where the child was sitting and then moved to his usual corner by the window. He looked out at Earth and thought about Yuna. When his break ended and he stood up to leave, he saw that the rabbit was gone. In its place was another drawing. This one showed a figure eating something round. Next to the figure there was a heart. HFY put the drawing in his pocket, right next to his heart. This became their routine. Every night HFY would come to the storage room. Every night the child would be there, waiting in her corner. He never asked her name. He never asked why she was alone. He never asked where her parents were. He just shared his space with her. He brought extra food and left some for her. He folded paper animals and taught her how to make simple shapes. He showed her pictures of Yuna on his small tablet, telling her about his daughter's favorite games and foods and songs. The child never spoke, not one word, not one sound. At first, HFY thought she was just shy, but as the weeks passed, he realized it was something more. She could not speak. When she tried to respond to his stories, she would open her mouth and nothing would come out. Her face would twist with frustration and her marks would flash in colors he did not understand. But she found other ways to talk. She drew pictures. She tugged at his sleeve when she wanted something. She pointed at things and nodded or shook her head. She learned to make the paper cranes herself, and she would leave them for him like little messages. HFY treated her the same way he had treated his struggling students back in Korea, with patience, with kindness, with the belief that every child had something beautiful inside them, even if they could not show it in the usual ways. One night he told her about his wife. He did not plan to. The words just came out. He was looking at Earth through the window and he started talking about Suwa, about how they met in college, about how she laughed at his bad jokes, about how she made the best soup in the world, about how she held his hand when Yuna was born and cried happy tears, about how she got sick, about how she got thinner and weaker every day, about how she died in a white hospital room while Yuna slept in a chair nearby, not knowing that when she woke up, her mother would be gone. He did not cry. He had cried enough already in the 2 years since Suwa left him, but his voice shook and his hands trembled. The child moved closer. She sat beside him, close enough that he could feel the strange, cool temperature of Veloran's skin. She did not touch him. She just sat there, present, listening without being able to respond. And somehow, that was exactly what he needed. Another night, he brought his tablet to make a video call. Yuna was still awake on Earth, and she was excited to talk to her father. Her small face filled the screen, and she talked and talked about her day at school, about the dog she saw on the street, about the drawing she made for her grandmother. Then she stopped talking. Her eyes grew wide. "Daddy," she said, "there is a pretty alien girl behind you." HFY turned. The child was standing near the door, half hidden in shadows, watching the screen with fascination. "Would you like to say hello?" HFY asked her gently. The child did not move for a long moment. Then slowly she stepped forward. She looked at the screen, at the small human girl waving at her, and she raised her own hand and waved back. It was just a wave, a tiny movement of fingers, but it made Yuna laugh with delight, and it made the child's marks glow a soft, warm gold. "She is pretty," Yuna said. "Is she your friend, Daddy?" HFY looked at the child, at her thin face, at her scared eyes, at the paper crane she still carried everywhere. "Yes," he said, "I think she is." After the call ended, the child sat next to HFY and drew a picture. It took her a long time. When she finished, she handed it to him. The picture showed three figures: a tall one that was clearly HFY, a small one with round eyes that was clearly Una, and between them, holding both their hands, was a third figure with glowing marks on blue skin. At the bottom, in shaky letters copied from his own notes, she had written a single word: friend. HFY felt his heart break and heal at the same time. He did not know who this child was. He did not know that she was royalty. He did not know that her own people called her broken, useless, a mistake that should be hidden away. He only knew that she was lonely, that she was hurt, that she needed someone to see her. In Park, HFY saw her, just as he saw every struggling student who sat in his classroom, just as he saw his own daughter when she cried for her mother in the night. He saw her, and he did not look away. He reached out and gently patted her head. Her marks flashed with surprise, then settled into a warm, peaceful glow. "Friend," he agreed, "that is a good word." Empress Vela stood at the window of her private chamber, looking down at the blue planet below. Earth. Such a small world, such primitive people, and yet it was all she could think about now. Her advisors thought she was planning diplomatic strategies. Her guards thought she was resting. No one knew that every night she sat alone in the dark and watched recordings on a hidden screen. Recordings of her daughter, her only child, her broken jewel. Princess Neera was born 6 years ago, on the day the twin moons of their home world aligned. It was supposed to be a blessing. The priest said she would be special, chosen by the stars themselves. They were wrong. When Neera was 3 months old, the doctors discovered the truth. Something was wrong with her throat. The delicate organs that produced Veloran voice were damaged, incomplete. She would never speak. She would never sing. For a human, this might be a sadness. For a Veloran, it was a death sentence. The Veloran people spoke with more than words. Their voices carried harmonics, frequencies that held meaning beyond simple language. A mother sang to her child to bond with them. A leader sang to their people to inspire them. A Veloran without voice was like a human without a heart. The court called Neera the silent flaw. They said she was cursed. They said she was punishment for some sin Vela had committed. Some advisors suggested sending her away to a distant moon where she would not embarrass the empire. Others suggested even darker solutions. Vela refused them all. Neera was her daughter, her blood, her love. She would not abandon her. But she could not protect her either. Not from the whispers, not from the stares, not from the way servants looked at the princess like she was a broken thing, not a person. Neera grew up isolated. She had no friends. The other noble children refused to play with her because she could not sing the songs they sang. Her tutors gave up on her because she could not answer their questions. She wandered the empty halls of the palace wing like a ghost, invisible to everyone. Just like her mother, who was too busy ruling an empire to sit with her daughter, too busy to hold her hand, too busy to show her that she was loved. Vela hated herself for it. She hated the crown that kept her trapped on a throne. She hated the advisors who filled her days with meetings and decisions. She hated her own weakness, her inability to choose her child over her duty. And then the security reports started coming. The head of palace security came to her 3 weeks ago with a worried expression. The princess had been leaving her quarters at night. She was sneaking through service corridors and empty hallways, going to the lower decks where no one important ever went. She was meeting with someone, a human, a janitor. Vela's first reaction was fear. What if the human was dangerous? What if this was some kind of plot? She ordered her guards to capture the man and bring him for questioning. But something made her stop. Something made her say, "Show me the recordings first." The guards played the footage on her private screen. Vela watched in silence as her daughter crept into a storage room and found a human man sitting on the floor. She watched Nira freeze in terror. She watched the man sit down calmly and eat his dinner like nothing was wrong. She watched him offer food to her daughter without asking anything in return. She watched him fold paper into the shape of a bird. She watched Nira take the paper with trembling hands and hold it against her chest like treasure. Vela ordered the guards to leave. She sat alone and watched more recordings, hours and hours of footage from hidden cameras. She saw the human man come back every night. She saw him bring more food, more paper animals, more gentle smiles. She saw him talk to her daughter, not as a servant to royalty, not as a primitive to a superior being, just as a person to a person. He told her stories. He showed her pictures of his own daughter. He laughed at the drawings Nira made for him. He never asked who she was. He never asked for anything. He just sat with her in the quiet darkness and treated her like she mattered. One night, the human talked about his dead wife. Vela watched him speak about his love, his loss, his grief. She watched his hands shake and his voice tremble, and she watched her daughter move closer to him and sit beside him in silence. Not trying to fix his pain, not offering empty words, just being there, present, real. It was such a simple thing, such a human thing. And it broke something inside Vela. She cried that night for the first time in decades, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for her daughter who had never had a friend. She cried for herself who had never been the mother she wanted to be. She cried for the human man who had lost his wife and still had enough kindness to share with a stranger. After that, she watched the recordings every night. She could not stop. It was like drinking water after walking through a desert. She had not realized how thirsty she was until she tasted something real. She watched the human introduce her daughter to his own child through a video screen. She watched Nira wave at the little human girl, the first time she had ever reached out to anyone. She watched the human's daughter laugh and call Nira pretty. She watched Nira draw a picture of three people holding hands and label it with the word friend. Vela traced her daughter's face on the screen. When had Nira learned to write human letters? When had she learned to smile like that, open and unguarded? When had she become this person that Vela did not recognize? Not from her mother, not from the palace, from a janitor who cleaned floors in the middle of the night. The advisors came to her the next morning with their usual complaints. They wanted her to do something about the human problem. They said it was inappropriate for royalty to associate with servants. They said it was damaging to the empire's reputation. Vela looked at them with cold eyes. "You have spent 6 years trying to help my daughter," she said. "The greatest doctors, the finest teachers, the most advanced technology in the galaxy. And what did you achieve? Nothing. She would not eat, she would not learn, she would not even look at us." She stood up from her throne, and her marks blazed with an anger she had hidden for years. "A human janitor achieved more in 3 weeks than you did in 6 years. He made her smile. He made her want to learn. He made her feel like she belonged somewhere." The advisors went silent. "You will not touch him," Vela said. "You will not speak to him. You will not even look at him. And if any of you tries to interfere with my daughter's friendship, I will personally see that you spend the rest of your lives cleaning floors beside him." They left without another word. That night, Vela watched the recordings again. The human was teaching her daughter how to fold a paper flower. Nira's small fingers struggled with the folds, but she kept trying. When she finally succeeded, her marks glowed bright gold with pride. The human smiled at her. "That is beautiful," he said. "You are very good at this." He did not know that those simple words meant more than all the praise Nira had ever received from her own people. He did not know that he was healing wounds that Vela herself had helped create. He was just being kind, just being human. And Vela, Empress of a galactic empire, powerful beyond measure, sat alone in her chamber and cried silent tears of gratitude for a man who did not even know she existed. HFY carried the gift in his pocket all day. It was small and round, wrapped in soft cloth that Yuna had picked out herself. His daughter had been so excited when he told her about his alien friend. She had insisted on sending a present. "For the pretty girl who cannot talk," Yuna said, "so she does not feel alone." The gift was a music box, an old one that had belonged to HFY's wife. When you wound it up, it played a Korean lullaby called Sambear and the Moon. Suah used to sing that song to Yuna every night before bed. After she died, the music box sang it instead. HFY was not sure if he should give it away. It was one of the few things he had left of his wife. But when he looked at his daughter's hopeful face, he knew it was the right thing to do. Suah would have wanted this. She would have wanted her music to comfort another lonely child. That night, HFY went to the storage room with his heart full of nervous energy. Nira was already there, waiting for him in her usual corner. Her marks glowed soft blue when she saw him, the color of comfort and familiarity. She had changed so much in the past weeks. When they first met, she had been a frightened creature who could barely look at him. Now she ran to greet him, tugging at his sleeve and pointing at the window where Earth hung like a blue jewel. He sat down beside her and pulled out the wrapped gift. Her eyes widened with curiosity. "This is from my daughter," he said. "From Yuna. She wanted to give you something special." Nira took the gift with careful hands. She unwrapped the cloth slowly, like she was afraid of breaking whatever was inside. When she saw the music box, she tilted her head in confusion. She had never seen anything like it. HFY took it from her gently and showed her the small key on the side. "You wind it like this," he said, turning the key several times. "And then you let it go and it plays music." He released the key, and the music box began to play. The melody was soft and sweet. It filled the small room like gentle rain, notes falling one after another in a pattern that felt like coming home. Nira went very still. Her marks flickered through colors too fast to follow, and her eyes grew large and round. She reached out and touched the music box with trembling fingers. She felt the vibrations moving through the metal, through her skin, into her bones. "My wife used to sing this song," HFY said quietly. "Every night she sang it to our daughter. It is a lullaby, a song for sleeping. It tells the story of a little bear who climbed a mountain to touch the moon." The music continued, each note clear and pure in the silence of the room. Nira pressed the box against her chest, feeling the vibrations against her heart. "After my wife died, Yuna could not sleep. She kept waking up and crying because there was no one to sing to her, so I gave her this music box. Now it sings for her mother." HFY's voice shook a little, but he kept going. "Music is special. It does not need words, it just feels. You can understand it even if no one explains it to you. It goes straight to your heart." The music box finished its song and fell silent. Nira looked up at HFY with an expression he could not read. Her marks glowed in colors he had never seen before, a mixture of gold and silver and something that looked almost like tears. She held up the music box, asking him without words to play it again. He smiled and wound the key. The melody began once more. This time, without thinking, HFY began to hum along. The sound was low and rough, unpracticed. He had not sung since Suah died. His voice cracked on the higher notes, and he felt embarrassed by how bad he sounded. But Nira was watching him with absolute focus. Her eyes followed the movement of his lips, the rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. She studied him like he was doing something magical. When the music box finished again, HFY stopped humming. His face felt warm. "Sorry," he said. "I am not a good singer. My wife was the one who could really sing. I just make noise." Nira shook her head. She pointed at him, then at her own chest, then at her throat. She was trying to tell him something, but he did not understand. She tried again. She opened her mouth and took a deep breath. Her marks began to glow brighter, flickering with effort. Her whole body trembled and her face twisted with concentration. HFY watched her, confused and a little worried. "Are you okay? Does something hurt?" Nira closed her eyes. Her small hands curled into fists. Every muscle in her body tensed like she was trying to lift something impossibly heavy. And then from her throat came a sound. It was not a word. It was not a song. It was just a single note, thin and fragile like a thread of light in darkness. It wavered and shook and broke almost immediately. But it was sound, it was voice. It was the first noise Princess Nira had ever made in 6 years of life. HFY stared at her. He did not know that this was supposed to be impossible. He did not know that the greatest doctors in the Veloran Empire had said she would never make a sound. He did not know that what he had just witnessed was a miracle. He only saw a little girl who had tried so hard to do something. A little girl whose face was red with effort and whose marks were flashing wildly. A little girl who looked at him with desperate eyes, waiting for his reaction. "That was beautiful," he whispered. His voice broke on the words. Tears were running down his face, and he did not try to stop them. "That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard." Nira's eyes filled with tears too. Her marks glowed bright gold, brighter than he had ever seen them. She opened her mouth and tried again. The sound came easier this time, still weak, still shaky, but longer. It was almost like humming, a vibration that seemed to resonate in the air between them. HFY opened his arms, and she threw herself into them. He held her tight while she cried against his chest, making that small humming sound over and over again like she could not believe it was coming from her. "You did it," he said, stroking her hair. "You found your voice. You are not broken. You were never broken. You just needed time. You just needed someone to listen." He held her for a long time while she cried and hummed and cried some more. The music box lay forgotten on the floor, its work already done. Neither of them knew that they were being watched. 3 decks above, in a dark observation room, Empress Vela was on her knees. She had collapsed when she heard her daughter's voice, her legs giving out beneath her. Tears poured down her face in rivers, and her marks flickered through every color in existence. Her daughter had made a sound. Her broken, silent, cursed daughter had made a sound. Not because of the doctors, not because of the teachers, not because of anything the mighty Veloran Empire had done. Because of a human, a janitor, a man who pushed a mop and folded paper birds and shared his dinner with strangers. Vela pressed her hand against the screen, touching the image of her daughter wrapped in that human's arms. She was sobbing so hard she could not breathe. "Thank you," she whispered to the man who could not hear her. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." In the storage room below, HFY rocked Nira gently and hummed the lullaby again. She hummed along with him this time, her voice blending with his in a clumsy, imperfect harmony. It was not beautiful by any standard that mattered to musicians or critics, but to a father who missed his wife, and a princess who had never had a voice, it was the most perfect song in the universe. And somewhere in the darkness, an empress wept tears of joy for the first time in her life. The summons came in the morning. 2 guards in silver armor stood at the door of HFY's small sleeping quarters, their faces hard and unreadable. They told him to come with them. They did not say why. HFY followed them through corridors he had never walked before. The floors here were polished like mirrors. The walls glowed with patterns that moved like living things. Everything smelled like flowers from a world he would never see. He was being taken to the Imperial Wing, to the place where royalty lived, to the place where a janitor had no business being. His heart beat fast with fear. He thought about last night, about Nira and the music box and the sound she had made. Had he done something wrong? Was he being punished for touching a Veloran child? Would they send him away, or worse? He thought about Yuna, about his mother, about the money he sent home every month. If he lost this job, he did not know what he would do. The guards brought him to a pair of doors so tall they seemed to touch the sky. They opened without anyone touching them, and HFY saw what lay beyond. A throne room, massive and beautiful and terrifying. Hundreds of Veloran nobles stood along the walls, their marks glowing in disapproving shades of red and purple. They looked at HFY like he was an insect that had crawled into their food. At the far end of the room, on a throne that seemed made of solid starlight, sat a woman. She was taller than any Veloran he had ever seen and more beautiful. Her marks swirled in patterns that hypnotized the eye. Her face was cold and hard, like a statue carved from ice. Empress Vela, ruler of 1,000 worlds, the most powerful being in the galaxy. HFY fell to his knees. His forehead touched the cold floor, and he pressed himself down as flat as he could go. He was shaking so hard his teeth rattled. He heard footsteps approaching, the soft sound of bare feet on polished stone. He kept his eyes shut and waited for judgment. "Rise," a voice said. It was clear and strong, like a bell ringing in an empty cathedral. HFY lifted his head slowly. The Empress was standing right in front of him. This close, he could see the tears in her eyes, the trembling of her lips. Her marks were glowing gold, warm and bright. She was not looking at him with anger. She was looking at him with something else, something that looked almost like gratitude. "Rise, Park HFY of Earth," she said again. He got to his feet on legs that barely held him. He did not understand what was happening. He did not understand why the Empress knew his name. Vela turned to face her court. The nobles fell silent, their marks fading to uncertain grays. "You all know my daughter," she said. Her voice echoed through the great hall. "You know what you have called her, the silent flaw, the cursed child, the broken jewel. You whispered about her in corners. You pitied her to her face and mocked her behind her back. You told me to send her away, to hide her, to pretend she did not exist." The nobles shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at the floor. Others stared straight ahead, faces frozen. "For 6 years my daughter had no friends, no one to play with, no one to talk to. She wandered this station like a ghost, and none of you cared. None of you tried to help her. You only cared about what she could not do." Vela's marks flashed red for a moment, then settled back to gold. She pointed at HFY, and he felt every eye in the room turn toward him. "This man," she said, "this human janitor did what none of you could do. He treated my daughter like a person. He shared his food with her. He taught her to make paper birds. He showed her that she was not alone." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked with emotion. "Last night my daughter made a sound. For the first time in her life she used her voice. Not because of your doctors, not because of your teachers, because a janitor from Earth sang her a lullaby." Gasps echoed through the throne room. The nobles looked at each other in shock. A mute Veloran making sound was not supposed to be possible. Vela walked closer to HFY. She stopped right in front of him, so close he could see the tears running down her cheeks. And then, the Empress of a galactic superpower did something that had never been done in the history of her people. She bowed. She bent at the waist, deep and slow, lowering her head before a human janitor. Her marks dimmed in a sign of respect, and she stayed there for a long moment while her court watched in stunned silence. "Thank you," she whispered, loud enough for only him to hear. "Thank you for seeing my daughter when no one else would." HFY did not know what to say. His mind was spinning too fast to form words. He just stood there, trembling, while the most powerful woman in the universe bowed before him. When Vela straightened, she addressed the court once more. "This man will be honored. He will be given a new position, one that reflects his true value. He will be my daughter's companion, her teacher, her friend, and anyone who disrespects him will answer to me personally." She looked at HFY then, and for a moment she was not an empress. She was just a mother who loved her child. "Is this acceptable to you?" she asked. HFY swallowed hard. His voice came out as a whisper. I I would like to keep seeing her. She gets lonely. And my daughter, Yuna, she wanted to meet her properly." Vela smiled. It transformed her face, making her look younger and softer. "Your daughter is welcome here any time. Nira has been asking about her." She had been asking. That meant Nira had been communicating, reaching out, wanting things. That was new. That was wonderful. HFY felt tears filling his eyes. "Then yes," he said. "Yes, I accept." The months that followed were strange and beautiful. HFY no longer pushed a mop through empty hallways. Instead, he spent his days with Nira, teaching her human games and human songs and human words. She could not speak them, but she could write them, and she could hum along when he sang. Yuna came to visit often. The first time she met Nira in person, the two girls stared at each other for a long moment. Then Yuna grabbed Nira's hand and said, "Come on, I will show you how to play hide and seek." They were inseparable after that. Yuna did not care that Nira could not talk. She just talked enough for both of them, filling the silence with laughter and stories and the endless energy of a child who had found a new best friend. Nira started to change. She smiled more. She hummed more. She stopped hiding in shadows and started walking in the light. Her marks glowed gold almost all the time now, the color of happiness. The Veloran court remained divided. Some nobles saw HFY as a symbol of human value, proof that the primitive species had something to offer after all. Others saw him as an embarrassment, a reminder that their great empire had failed where a simple janitor had succeeded. But none of that mattered to HFY. He did not care about politics or empires or the weight of stars. He cared about two little girls who played together in a storage room. He cared about paper cranes and music boxes and lullabies sung in the dark. One evening he sat by the window with Nira beside him. They were folding paper cranes together, their hands moving in perfect rhythm. Earth hung in the sky below them, blue and green and beautiful. "My wife used to say something," HFY said quietly. "She said that kindness is the only language that everyone can understand, rich or poor, human or alien. It does not matter where you come from. Kindness always makes sense." Nira looked at him with her big silver eyes. Then she picked up a piece of paper and wrote something on it with careful letters. She handed it to him. The paper said, "You taught me that." HFY smiled and pulled her close. He did not need empires or thrones or crowns. He did not need the galaxy to know his name. He just needed this. A little girl who had found her voice, a daughter who had found a sister, a family made of paper cranes and starlight and the simple, powerful magic of being kind. The Empress watched them from a hidden camera as she did every night. She was smiling now, though tears still fell from her eyes. Her daughter was not broken. She never had been. She just needed someone to see her. And in the end, it was not an empress who saved a princess. It was a janitor with a mop and a kind heart. That was the most human thing of all.